Well, let me start by taking this opportunity to welcome everybody to the mental health in the 21st century conversation. I think we're going to have a very good session today and quite few insight from our presenters, as well as we'll also have a question and answer session where we're actually expecting that everybody can zoom into this. I always say that mental health for me before COVID-19, it was us and them situation. But when we got locked down after COVID, it became an everybody issue. We all realized and recognized, actually, the Human Science Research Council showed us that most people presented with mental health, don't want to say sickness, but I would say mental health issues. Because we can only call it sickness unless it's been diagnosed professionally. I am Dr. Siyabonga Nzimande. I will be facilitating today's session. We have an apology from our CEO, Anastasia, who's actually listening. She's actually part of the conversation today, but she's feeling a little bit under the weather. I think because she did not remind me that it was her birthday on Sunday, so she deserves the bit of sickness. But we're going to have fun. So our first is going to be, we're going to start with Ms. Kulani. I was starting with you. We're starting with Prabashni Munsami.
Prabashni Munsami is an attorney, conveyancer, mediator, and business rescue practitioner, and the founder of Prabashni Munsami Attorneys and Conveyancers. She is also the voice behind Legal Life Balance Guru, a platform dedicated to supporting the well-being of legal professionals through trauma-informed, emotional aware, and sustainable approaches to practice and life. In addition to her legal work, Prabashni has served in leadership at Lifeline Pretoria, including as vice chairperson and chairperson, and is qualified and is a qualified lay counselor, training together with her lived experience in the legal profession, and is equipped with additional insight and practical skills in emotional support, active listening, boundaries, and wellness-focused guidance. She is passionate about helping demands of practice, compassion fatigue, stress, and the struggles of balancing professional excellence with personal well-being. She offers well-focused practical coaching and support for legal professionals navigating stress, burnout, emotional demands, healthy boundaries, and sustainable balance in practice and life.
Well, I don't know. Professionally, I think this is a very beautiful introduction. We have two things in common, but I don't want to steal your time. The first one is Lifeline. So I've worked with Lifeline for 3 years, Lifeline Durban. And I'm still an alumni of Lifeline and coaching. And I think it's going to be interesting to hear your take from the legal perspective, and also with someone that has touched base with what does it mean to have a counselor? What does it mean to have a coach? What does it look like in the 21st century? I think it's going to be interesting. Let me not waste any further time. Let's go into your presentation. Lucy, can you please flag the presentation, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I appreciate that introduction. And yeah, I look forward to us engaging later on during our Q&A session. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate the platform. And when I saw that Mashobane Advisory was going to be highlighting mental health in the 21st century, I jumped at the opportunity to be able to present just because it's a passion project for me. So thank you so much for having me and agreeing to let me be on the platform. So my name is Prabhashini Monsami. You got a little bit of my background, so I'm not going to go over it again. I just want to be able to say from the onset that I'm not speaking as a psychologist. That's not my qualification. I'm not speaking as someone who's mastered balance at all. I'm still learning, and we're always still in practice. But I am speaking as a legal practitioner who understands the emotional realities of professional life, client-facing work, pressure, trauma, trauma exposure, and the need for human sustainability. So my perspective comes from both professional experience, but also lived experience. And I think when I say this, I'm saying this from the deepest part of me. I know that some seasons are heavy, and I know that people look functional while still carrying a lot inside. And I want to start honestly by saying that I'm not here tonight as someone who's perfected mental health, the balance, the emotional wellness. I'm just here as a legal practitioner, as a woman, as a counselor that's trained in Lifeline, and a human being that understands that when the seasons are heavy, that's when we need the support. So sometimes when we speak on mental health, we speak from a place of expertise, but other times we speak from a place of lived experience. And tonight for me, with some heaviness, I speak from both. So that is the lens that I see the world, and I see the balance and the need for balance. And yeah, thank you. We can, next slide. Thank you. So what I want to say is that our mental health, firstly, is not something that we should be pushing to the side. It's something that we need to really be aware of, constantly protecting that side of us. And we need to speak to ourselves with kindness, and also always take care of ourselves, especially from the legal profession. I think that we need to have a certain language that we speak to ourselves, that we also are able to speak to our clients with. So from that perspective, I think it's really important. What I want to remind everyone is that mental health is not a weakness. It's about remaining human. It's about having an understanding of when things are heavy, and having that understanding whilst we're still carrying really demanding roles. And it's understanding that if it's not taken care of, it starts to affect different things. It affects our decision making, and especially in high functioning roles like we have, that's something that we can't neglect. So it affects our conflicts, it affects our relationships at home or outside. It affects the leadership and the qualities that we wish to present. It affects how we can keep on going sustainably. So just taking care of that, or at least being aware of something that might be affecting our mental health, is really important. Next slide. Okay. So we are we're going through this. The 21st century and our professional life is conflicting sometimes. And I think it's really important for us to know that when we're working, when we're parenting, we're also speaking about how do we keep on doing that without disappearing from ourselves. So I think it's important for us to just have some tips for us to be able to understand that burnout is something that needs our attention, something that needs, we've almost made it seem as if it's normalized, and that's not okay. Burnout is really, it has such a deep effect, and my best friend told me recently that it honestly takes years for us to recover from burnout and our brain to recover from it. So when we see the signs, and it's important for us to start identifying certain signs, um, we'll start to be able to deal with our depleted energy and start to preserve our energy in ways that are really going to help us long term. So in professional spaces, especially in law, we often mistake functioning and high functioning for wellness. That's not always the case. We can be functioning, but we might not be well. And when I say that, I mean our mental wellness. So if someone's answering emails, attending court, meeting the deadlines, running a business, caring for the family, paying the bills, just showing up every day, and we often say that that shows that we fine, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we fine. Sometimes in this day and age, we just simply surviving. Yes, we're doing it efficiently, we're surviving efficiently, but at the end of the day, it's not thriving, it's not balanced, it's just mere survival. So the other thing that we do is that we reward that productivity, that speed, those outcomes, but we don't give the stress, the and we the and the survival mode, that attention that it requires. There's a lot of emotional suppression as well. So what is important is that we speak about our energy management. I think many professionals try to just solve the burnout with trying to um, schedule a diary better, but they forget about the actual the necessity of having to deal with that depleted energy and how to recover from that. So it's we need to identify how we protect our energy, and we need to use our judgment that we use in our daily lives for our professional careers. We need to use that same judgment in our own lives and in our own analysis of what's going on with us. So I think there's really important warning signs that we need to be looking out for. And when I said right at the beginning, I'm speaking from a place of a heavy season. I'm speaking from a place of already identifying some of this, and I'm doing things that I haven't done before. I'm being able to make people that are closest to me aware of the fact that I'm taking strain, that I'm under pressure, that I'm not doing okay, which is something that I never used to do. There was a lot of suppression, there was a lot of masking. So I think it's important. And for this, I'm definitely speaking from a place of trying to live through my own experience. And the warning signs for me is definitely the exhaustion, the headaches, um, sometimes the irritability, definitely insomnia, um, the numbness. Sometimes we feel cold and closed off and not able to pick up on emotions. And then just the constant feeling of a bit of being on edge. So I think those are some of the warning signs that people need to look out for when you're getting too close to burnout. So that's something that I think is important to just highlight, especially in the 21st century. Next slide. Okay, so like I said, where I'm coming from is my professional lens, my working in the 21st century is being a legal practitioner. I'm an attorney, I'm a conveyancer, I'm doing a lot of mediations. I'm a licensed business rescue practitioner. And that means for me that I often meet people who are in conflict. And I can't speak for other professions, but when people come to a legal practitioner, they always coming to you in a state of conflict or in a state of crisis. It's almost never just an advisory role. It's almost like a fixing the problem role, and in addition to that, an advisory role. So it's constant attending to conflict, crisis, loss, fear, uncertainty, and in that space, you're having to make also really high stake decisions. So where I've been able to feel like I cross over and I am able to understand both sides of the coin is me having gone through counseling training where I've learned other skills. So I've learned listening skills, and I've learned that sometimes it's not always a place of immediate advice. And it's very difficult to balance something like that because you're getting to, you're speaking from a place of you need to give the legal advice, but you also need to be able to listen and be mindful of what's going on. So that's where I'm coming from. And that's where I thought that us having some sort of life um, life balance, work-life balance, and for me, work-life balance would mean my legal life balance came into play. So that's why I offer a safe space if needed for legal professionals, because that's the only profession I can speak from, to be able to guide them, be able to show them tools or how to speak to clients or how to provide spaces where there's human empathy and just without losing that professionalism. So that's where I come from in terms of my lens. Um, so again, not a psychologist, but just a legal professional who understands that there are deep emotional realities in practice. And that's not something we trained in. We don't ever get that in university. We don't get that in our practical legal training. We don't get that in our articles at all. More often than not, we are on the receiving end of the mental abuse. So it's something that we have to learn, and it's not something that comes naturally to some of us, but it is something that is important. So I think for us, and the tip going forward is just having that awareness of that needing to balance our legal life with being a professional, but also having to be a human being. Next slide. Okay, so like I said, I speak from a space of being a legal professional. And like I said, we don't only deal with law. We trained to analyze, we trained to advise, we trained to argue, negotiate, and solve problems, but we're not trained to deal with that emotional weight that comes in. So, when clients come to us with they come to us with their worst seasons, and we are also dealing with our different seasons. I think that's the theme of my talk tonight, that there are different seasons in our lives. And when clients come to us, it's normally in their worst seasons, in their divorce or death for their estates, or injury that they've sustained, or debt, or their businesses are in struggle, or there's some sort of abuse of some conflict that they just cannot resolve on their own. And they don't always arrive to us in a calm or logical way. they arrive from that same season of what they're going through. So they are hurt, they're afraid, they're angry, they're overwhelmed, they sometimes ashamed, they are traumatized. And we are expected to remain professional, composed. We have to have the solutions. And like I said, that's not always something we trained in. So I think what's really important is emotional awareness and being, I'm going to touch on it just now, but there's something called being trauma informed. And that's the place where we need to come from. So we take care of ourselves, but we're also able to take care of what's in front of us. So we are trauma informed of the trauma that we're being exposed to from our clients. So from a perspective of being able to deal with that, we need to be able to name what's appearing before us. We also need to recognize that this is labor that's not, you can't bill for this. You can't, it's not something you can see. It's not something that's tangible. It's not something that we can draft. But it's how we present, and it's how we need to also take care of ourselves. So what I can encourage practitioners or just professionals to do is just to notice what types of matters drain you, and whether that's something you need to have stronger support for or put up stronger boundaries, whether it's something that you need to adjust your comfort levels to, or whether you need to say that this is actually something that's uncomfortable for me, and it's something that I need to decide whether I can do in future, or have some self-preservation procedures in place so that you're not depleted, so that you're not completely drained from this. Next slide. Okay, so like I was saying, trauma-informed does not mean that you're becoming the therapist. So I think that's really important. You can't be a therapist. That's not what you trained for. That's not what you're licensed for. But what you can do is know that it doesn't have to be a soft practice either. It's not, it's just being conscious. It's being human centered. It's still remaining true to your ethical responsibilities. So you mustn't go out there to say, hey, you're traumatized, you're diagnosing these people. That's not what they came there for. But you do need to come to them from a place of understanding. And you need to know that you also need to hold a place of a boundary. So you have to have a boundary, but you have to have a safe space for people. And that doesn't, you can't, your boundary doesn't mean mitigating their experience or humiliating someone. It's actually just having a boundary to say, you understand, but this is not what you're here for, and this is what you can provide. So for us to say that this is something that we can do and we can put in place, we need to have our resources, our trusted, protected resources, places that we need to be able to reach out to when we are encountering things like this. We also need to know our limits of our role and where we need to stop. What I would say is that maybe in our practices, we should have like a referral list. For me, obviously, the first place I would say, if that if I'm encountered with something like that and I feel like additional counseling is required, then I would recommend counseling or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but do that from a place of non-judgment. So there's a very thin line that we have to walk as well. And then just remind yourself that you need to also keep yourself aware of whether this is something that you're comfortable with, whether it's something that you are like you need to also be constantly aware of your burnout boundary or your risk, and see whether there is a requirement for further referral. Next slide. So I keep talking about boundaries, and I'm definitely guilty of definitely not having enough boundaries, but also at least being able to recognize that that's a problem for me. And being able to learn that with every new day or every new client or whatever step I take, I can always rectify that, or I can do better, because we have to learn and we have to take care of ourselves. Because we in a profession where we're supposed to be taking care of the needs of other people. So taking care of our own needs is extremely important. And it's definitely something that I need to put into place. So I think there was a comment about fatigue and compassion. So I think what we really are facing is, when we have very little boundaries, and there are people in the world that are really empathetic, and you when you are of that empathetic nature, you also take on a lot of those energies, and you want to be able to help, and you want to be able to solve the problems and fix everything. And with that empathy, with that compassion, leads to deep fatigue sometimes. And that fatigue can also present itself in other ways, where you are completely depleted and you're not able to provide that for something that is really important or really urgent. And it's just something that has that effect, that knock-on effect, when you have to actually be there for some urgency, or because you've put yourself in a position of such compassion but without boundaries, that you've led to a depletion of your energy and that fatigue. So I think it's just, you have to have boundaries without guilt. I think it's really important that we can be compassionate, and that's not a bad thing. Compassion is a beautiful thing, but also you need to have some boundaries. And I think that it's not okay for us to absorb the other emotions and other pain that we surrounded by. We can listen without rescue. We can be present, but not we without taking on everything, without taking the ownership onto ourselves. We can be caring, but we don't have to carry what is not ours. Because remember, at the end of the day, we also have our own lives, right? We have our own family issues, and we have our own traffic that we have to get through in the morning. We have our own battles that we're fighting every day. So we just need to be mindful of the fact that we can be compassionate, we can be there for people, but also we need to be there for ourselves. So what that can sound like, and I need to practice this more, is that I will respond during working hours, or I need time to consider this properly. I can hear that this is emotionally urgent and draining for you, but I just need you to know that we must follow the correct procedure, and we need to follow the correct steps, and I can't do that right now and immediately. So just know that boundaries is not going to be a rejection. It's structure. It's something that you need to put in place. And I think that's where we can really gain value from, because we're a profession of structure. And if we see that boundaries can be a structure that we need to put up, then that's going to be what allows us to advocate from a place of a boundary. So we just need to take cognizance of that. What we can do for ourselves is have little small recovery rituals after heavy workloads, or just try and have some rest. And rest, remember, rest is something that we need. It's not something that we should be rewarding ourselves, or we say that we should be doing this because we've succeeded in this matter, but it should actually be something that we are putting into our place again from a structure or a strategy perspective. That's what we need. We need boundaries, we need rest. And that's where we need to position ourselves. So yeah, thank you. So women, because I am a woman, I can speak from that glance, from that lens as well, and give my view on that. And I think it's something that we constantly do, where we look at a woman, and even though she deserves that celebration, and I'm not taking away from that, we celebrate that she's carrying everything, but we don't really recognize what it actually costs. So from a perspective of speaking honestly about women, because more often than not, we carrying more than one full-time job, it's a full-time life, and there's many different facets, because women are like born and natural caregivers, um, household managers, problem solvers all at once. And we had add the professional capacity to that. And then what you don't see is that there's an emotional burden and labor that's just bogging us down and just pulling us down constantly. So it's rarely ever given the attention, because it's rarely ever shown, because we don't show that. So I think we praised, and we are strong, and we praised for being strong. That's true, that's correct, but we also are very tired. And it's that constant strength that we and persona that we need to put outward, that sometimes becomes a very lonely place. So what I would say is that we definitely need to have support systems. We need to have safe spaces. We need to have our girlfriends. We need to have our support groups. We need to be able to heal in a way that is going to have every one of our season doesn't have to be looking like um, we've moved forward or we've achieved something. There could be a season where you could be resting and rejuvenating, and that's also a win. That's also something that needs to be celebrated. When you see that someone is taking a step back for whatever reason, it could be a personal reason, and it's a very it could be even be something that I think what I'm trying to say is that when we say personal reasons or uh, a personal day, there shouldn't be any shame attached to that. It actually should be something that we applaud and we recognize is important. And we need to be able to know that I wish for the world in the 21st century. I wish that the world is a safe space for us to be able to share, but I don't think we're there yet. So I think that these platforms are really important for us to have some sort of sisterhood or mentorship, or even if it's spirituality, if it's prayer, if it's friendships, whatever it is, we just need to be able to um, have warmth and dignity in that. I think it's really important. Next slide. So practical tools, and I think I've touched on some of them, but what I don't want to give unrealistic advice. I want for people to know when they are feeling overwhelmed. And it's I'm not saying that any of these things are bad things, and I'm not saying that when it's given to us as advice, or it's given to us as tools, it's something to be frowned upon. But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes when you're so overwhelmed, and then you have to add another task like meditating or journaling or exercising, or just adding something else to a routine that's already completely tapped out, that can in itself feel extremely daunting. So I just want to say, from a perspective of just being able to name it, just being able to recognize it, and being able to notice it, and just being able to set like one small boundary, that can maybe just be just a step, like in a place where there's so much anxiety and feeling of being overwhelmed. Just one step is not a lot to ask. And then when you take the one step and then you see whether that little boundary or that little coping mechanism that you thought of or felt, and when I'm saying little, I mean as little as just breathing, as little as calling your friend and having a laugh, or as little as driving through and getting an ice cream, whatever feels like comfort to you, and that's your small comfort, that's okay. You might not have time to go and do the 1 hour meditation, or the rushing to the church, or for your guidance from your pastor or your priest. It might not be those things that are possible immediately. It's something that you will find joy and help in when you get that opportunity. But in the immediate moment, just take the small steps, one step at a time, to be able to feel like you have some control. And I've been feeling that lately, and I, from a person who is genuinely practicing minimalism and trying to be in control of her finances, the only thing that I felt could help me is buying something that I thought would look good on me. So, like a new outfit. And I felt I could at least control that because it was my choice. It was something that I wanted to do for myself, and it was something that I didn't do for myself for a long time. So that was what I felt good about. And that was what I felt made me have a little bit of control, and was, even though overstepped one of my other boundaries, made me feel like it was still a boundary because I was putting myself first. So always know that you can have that one conversation, or you can, even if it's an outburst and it's a dramatic outburst, I think it's okay. Just know that if that works for you in the moment, do it. Also do it from a place of kindness, and be kind to yourself, but do what feels good to you. Also just recognize that there are sometimes toxic environments, and if you need to take yourself out of those things, then do that. I think what we feel is important for us to recognize. Like, we all have this internal sense or sixth sense, and we must recognize that what's not working for us, our body will give us these signs, and our body will give us like the headaches and our body will tell us when we need to rest, and we need to listen to that. Okay, so what that means is just building that community, having those supported people, recognizing who your safe space is, where your safe place is. I think in the 21st century, trust is such a fleeting uh, thing that we feel like might be a safe space, and then it actually isn't, and then that makes you feel even more depleted, and that you can only learn from experience. So it's not something that is tried and tested and you know exactly where you are going to find a trustworthy safe place. That's unfortunately not how the world is. But I think, again, listening to our body, listening to how people or spaces feel to us is important. You Let me just go through my points, because I feel like I'm not as structured as I should be, because it's something that I'm so passionate about. But um, I think what's really important is that mental health is not only about crisis intervention, right? It's about how we live every single day, how we work, how we cope, how we support others, but how we also remain human and kind to ourselves. You do not have to be falling apart before you deserve support. You do not have to earn rest through collapse. You do not have to carry everything alone simply because people see you as capable. Strong communities are not built by people pretending they are fine. They are built when people feel safe enough to be honest, supported enough to heal, and respected enough to set boundaries. So, in a space where there's so much uncertainty, if you need some support and if you need a place that might be able to have some understanding, then there are spaces like me, and it might be just a stepping stone before therapy or before any further diagnosis that might need to happen. It's just there's some support, um, and it might not be just something as structured as this. The support could be your family, your friends, your colleagues. It could be a phone call to a support helpline like Lifeline. There are systems in place to be able to provide that. So I think we must recognize, and if it resonates for you that something isn't feeling the best, then know that there is support that is available.
Wow, professionally, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You speak so passionately about this. I think you and I need to have coffee.
Yes. No, definitely.
It's back now.
Okay.
I want us to engage, but I also professionally want you to maybe let me not steal time from the question and answer sessions, but I love it when you said it's not a side issue, that it's not something that we need to deal it about it on the side and think it's a quick. I always say this, I think this is where we can both agree, that I always say that it's not a microwave solution. It's mental health is not a microwave. You don't just watch a TikTok video or watch a podcast or read one line from one quote that speaks about mental health. Then you suddenly walk around and saying, I think I'm okay. So it's not going to be a microwave meal. It's going to be work. And I think that recognition that this is going to need some work to be done on me, and there is some work that needs to be done on myself, is a first step to healing. It's a first step into acceptance that I need to walk into this. I also love one thing that you said. I think you are destigmatizing it, where you said that mental health should not be an embarrassment. Nobody should be embarrassed about this. It's nobody should be ashamed. You
Yes.
know, it's an everybody's business. Let me last one, which also shook me, and I hope the mentees are writing this down. Recognition respond, boundaries, and refer. In psychology, we call it recognizing and referring. In industrial psychology, where we got peer education in the workplace, where we then realize that people may not necessarily always be empowered to speak to a manager. People may not be
Yes.
always be empowered to speak to Anastasia as they are under Mashobane, but they might be able to speak to each other as peers. So strategically placing peers in the workplace and training them and equipping them to actually be ready and be positioned enough to provide the recognition and referral. And I'm not saying that now that you're in the workplace, this is where you put on your gloves and you want to become a therapist. But just that little knowledge that I was able to recognize and refer. I
Yes.
don't know.
Yes.
You spoke so much. Let me leave it there. I think we're going to come back to you during question and answers. You're quite passionate about this. I think our last point is leading so perfectly to Kulani. Kulani, with your experience in human resources and in labor law, and I think you've also very much passionate about mental health in the workplace. I'm interested to hear your take in this conversation.
Mhm.
I know that you're an accomplished business operations professional, you're skilled in operations, but what took me is the human resource because I believe that when people are well taken care of and their wellness is prioritized, then they produce better and they function
100%.
better. I want to
100%.
leave this to you. I'm hoping that I'm not going to mess up your bio, but I want to invite you. I'm already excited to hear your insight around this conversation, and I want to hear in particular what are your insights and what are your pockets of insight around in the workplace. What does that look like for you? Let's go into your presentation. Maybe as the introduction, you can touch on what I'm talking about, but maybe it's already in your presentation because I read your bio and I was like, this is it. This is what we need to see. It's not just about conflict resolution. And I was reading your bio and I'm like, I love this because there's mental health. It's not because sometimes where the conflict arises, there's issues of wellness that need to be spoken
100%.
about. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sia. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. As introduced, my name is Gulani Shilubani, and I run a little spaza shop called Shiluba. We are an HR and labor law consultancy, and one of our areas of expertise and one of my
It is
areas.
not a sponsor shop, it's a mega influential, amazing establishment. Sorry to mess in your mouth.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, Dr. Sia. Yeah. So one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about as a human resource and labor law professional is mental wellness in the workplace. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if we could just go on to the next slide for me, I'd really appreciate that. So, what are the realities that we are faced with as a country? Because at the end of the day, one of my biggest things that I always say, and if you've ever heard me speak before, if you're ever going to hear me speak again, you're going to always hear this line: we bring our entire selves into the workplace. Gone are the days where you clock in, you leave your problems at the door, you work, you pick up your problems, and you go home. Those days have come and gone. Everything that we do now, we bring our entire selves into the workplace. And what that looks like for us as South Africans is that 1 in 3 people will, experience a mental health condition, right? And I actually think to a certain degree that number might be a little bit bigger. These are the numbers that we have of people who have been brave enough to come and actually have a conversation, who have had the exposure in the workplace, as Dr. Sia was saying, to have a colleague who recognizes what we call it in in the work that we do. We call it a mental health first aider, but we'll have a little conversation about that a little bit later, right? And a big contributor to mental conditions developing, worsening, people moving from a stable position where they are dealing with their mental health or mental health condition, conducively, or them experiencing a worsening of the condition, is actually what happens in the workplace, right? So that's 1 in 3. And like I said, I'm one to believe who thinks that number is a little bit bigger, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, right? So the workplace realities is this. We've glorified this always on culture where I'm even guilty of it. I always say to people when they call me and I pick up on the first ring, they're like, oh my God, were you on your phone? And I'm like, guys, my phone is an extension of my hand. As a business owner, I'm glued to and everybody celebrated like, oh my gosh, you're always busy, you're always available. And that contributes to our mental overload, to mental health conditions developing as well. The digital overload as well. Gone are the days where when I started working, work was a little bit more manual, right? You left I don't know how many Gen Zs on here, but I used to leave my PC in the office and go home and, do home things. Now my laptop is with me, my iPad is with me, my clients' laptops are with me. Right now I'm sitting with another laptop. There are several sitting on my desk. So we have this digital overload where we're always looking at something, a screen, etc., etc. We've blurred the lines between work and our personal life. And that's one thing that has happened in our recent future in the 21st century, thanks to COVID, working from home, hybrid work situations. Our organization is hybrid, and I can tell you the 2 days that we are in the office are a little less mentally overloading for me because, as I like to say, I have time to chat with my colleagues and my team. I'm not always sitting in front of my laptop with my double screen trying to do things. That blurredness contributes a lot to it, because when you're working from home, the reality is that you're probably sitting at your desk just before breakfast or with your cup of coffee. Then maybe if you're a parent, whatever, you might go and drop kids off, etc., etc. But you're sitting at your laptop until way past the time that you're supposed to be sitting at your laptop as well. We also have these. It's a pet peeve of mine as an HR professional and somebody who works, in organization. High performing teams. There's always this pressure of always being on, performing at, ridiculous levels that are sometimes really not attainable, and they're not conducive to our well-being as well. There's also a lot of economic pressures, right? Petrol is going up. I was actually just saying to my family the other day that I think we're going to start eating once a day, because if I have to go to Woolies one more time to, refill the coffers for you guys, it's getting really, really expensive. So those kinds of things also put a lot of pressure and contribute to people's mental load in the workplace and in general as well. We see this because we're seeing rising levels of burnout. People are stressed, people are anxious, and what this looks like is very, very different in different circumstances, right? We're also seeing people who are present, but we call it presentism. Employees are present, but they're not functioning. You have people in the workplace that used to be able to deliver good quality work on time consistently. Now we just have bums on seats where people are actually just coming, they're clocking in, they're doing the bare minimum, and it's not because they're trying to be, dishonest employees. They're actually just overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're anxious, they have a lot that is going on. Like I said, it might not only be the stuff that is happening at work, even though work is a very big contributor. Gone are the days where we do not bring our entire selves into the workplace as well. So there are other contributing factors as well. We see a lot of increased absenteeism in the workplace as well, and where people are disengaged. Disengagement levels globally right now are sitting well over the 50 percentile mark. We're sitting at about 60, 67. So people are there, but they're not there. People are not as engaged in their workplace or in their work as we used to see. And this has to do a lot with how, people are, work is a big driver of mental health conditions or developing conditions in the workplace as well. So all of these things contribute to mental health in the workplace as well. There's a lot of talk about workplaces being toxic and my boss is toxic, etc. So all of these nuances are a big contributor to the reality that we're facing in terms of what is happening about mental health in the workplace. Next slide, please. So how does the organization or how do workplaces try to deal with these kind of realities that we're facing? A lot of what we are faced with in what I do, as a professional is EAPs, which stands for Employee Assistance Programs. These are valuable. However, they are very, very limited, right? So what a typical EAP program will offer, it will offer counseling and support. Normally it will be, here's a crisis line, phone, it's always outsourced. It's never within the organization, right? They give you financial advice. They'll also give you wellness advice. There's also crisis and trauma intervention. We actually had a situation once where we actually had to respond to a client who unfortunately, they were at a Christmas party and it was on a deck and the deck collapsed. And so that was a crisis trauma thing that we had to deal with for that particular client. These, like I said, EAPs are valuable. However, they're very, very underutilized and for good reason, right? One of those things is that EAPs are very reactive. So they want to deal with something once it's happened. They don't necessarily try to prevent anything in terms of mental health in the workplace, right? There's a lot of stigma and confidentiality concerns as well. Employees are very, very cautious about reaching out to an EAP because what tends to happen is that even if the EAP is outsourced to a different organization, the organization is going to ask for stats, who's taking it up, etc., etc., etc. And sometimes, when a key account manager for an EAP program and maybe the HR or team leaders, those lines become blurred because then they'll be like, oh yeah, Susan has, reached out to us so many times. And sometimes that is weaponized in the workplace where we know somebody is, reaching out for help, but because it's known that Susan is reaching out for help, that is then weaponized. And again, that gives EAPs a very, very, very bad rap as well. Right? There's limited awareness and accessibility as well. We come into organizations a lot of the times where people don't even know that there's an EAP program. They don't even know how to access it. So how then are they actually supposed to utilize this tool that is there to help them, right? And the biggest one for me, it's often EAPs are not aligned with local cultural realities, right? We talk a lot about people going to counseling, support groups, etc., etc. EAPs are a very Western way of dealing with mental health conditions, but we live in a very African traditional, society where, sitting on a couch and having a conversation with a clinical psychologist is not what a lot of majority of the people are going to want to do when they recognize or they have the awareness that they have a mental health issue going on. Some people want to deal with it in different ways. There's African spirituality, there's religion, there's all sorts of ways that EAPs are missing into tapping into how we can actually offer help in a multicultural African context as well, right? And EAPs are also rather focusing on fixing the individual rather than addressing broader workplace concerns as well. We all know, I'm sure I hope, where we've all experienced where there's that one problematic child within the workplace and we are all, suffering because of that one problematic child, but they're trying to fix me and not that other person. Right? So that then becomes another issue that we need to sort of look into as well. So while EAPs play an important role, they do not address root causes of workplace health, mental health challenges. And that's something that we are trying to fix in the work that we do at Shuluba. Like I said, one of the things that we do is, mental health first aider training. I'm a trained mental health first aider. And what that does is that it trains people within the organization organization to recognize signs and symptoms of people developing mental health conditions, to advocate for broader support within the organization. They also are there to refer and support people to whatever programs are available, but it's in the workplace, so people can get the help that they need as well. So EAPs are great, but we need to rethink how we are making EAPs available for people in the context that we find ourselves in as well. Next slide, please. So what is the shift? How do we rethink mental health in the workplace, right? We need to move beyond compliance and standalone wellness programs. We need to focus on addressing the root causes, right? Root causes, things like job design, right? Organizational culture, things that we talk a lot about, things like psychological safety and management practices as well. One of the biggest things that we find in organizations is that people who are good at a job are promoted to manage other people, but nobody takes into consideration whether they're good with people. Right. So you have a manager that is technically skilled and they are great at what they're doing, but they have no cooking clue when it comes to managing and supporting people. Because if you're going to be managing people, a big part of managing people is managing their well-being, not only the work that they do. It's about managing, it's about creating psychological safety within the workplace. It's about managing work culture that is conducive to people thriving in the workplace. But we're seeing a lot of the opposite of that, because we're promoting for technical skills with zero consideration for whether this person has the ability to manage people effectively as well, right? Okay, so what should organizations do? I'm the kind of person who's like, okay, if I'm going to bring you a problem, I'm going to bring you a solution. Okay, so this is what people should be doing. We need to create safe spaces for open conversation, right? We do this very well. I know I'm tooting my own horn, but we do this very, very well in an organization, and it's a top-down practice, because if the leadership is not practicing it, it's the rest of the organization is not going to practice it. I'm the first in my organization to tell my team, I'm not showing up in a couple of days. I'm taking a mental health day because I am at the point where I actually really need to take one, right? What does that do? It creates a situation where people within our organization are able to have conversations about taking time off because they can feel that they are overwhelmed, they are stressed. It's all been a lot, right? So if you can create those open conversation, it destigmatizes issues around mental health, because at the end of the day, we need to understand that mental health conditions, can happen to anyone. And it's always the high performing ones, the ones that tell you that they're fine when they're not fine, that are the ones that are, suffering in silence, right? We need to build manager capability to support teams. If you are managing people, it is your responsibility to ensure that you have the capacity to pour into that team, right? So you need to be able to tell if somebody on your team is not well and advise them and say, listen, it's, we've had a very long period of, stress. I need you to take a bit of time off. Or to say, Gulani, I've realized that you are not okay. Do you need time off? How can we support you? Also, understanding that people want to be managed differently. I don't want to be micromanaged. I'm a big girl. I know what I'm doing. So the moment somebody's going to be sitting on my head micromanaging me, I'm going to be frustrated at work. However, there are people who need that constant support, that constant oversight. So you need, as a people manager, to understand how to manage who and when and how. You cannot just put a blanket approach. So as organizations, when you are putting people in managerial positions, you need to understand that they need to have this capacity to be able to do that, right? So you need to design contextual, relevant and inclusive solutions. again, that goes back to what we're talking about in terms of EAPs. When you are trying to solution for mental wellness and mental health that is conducive into the workplace, you can't just introduce one solution, because it's not a one size fits all kind of approach. You need to introduce multiple solutions that are inclusive to everybody within the workplace. You need to have a look at what the organization looks like, and those solutions need to be able to speak to a majority. It's difficult to say that you'll get it 100% right, but even if we can get it to 80% right, that would be ideal. But what we tend to see is that everybody says, oh, here's an EAP, phone the counselor, have a conversation with the counselor, and that's that, right? But there's so many other ways in which organizations can contribute in this particular regard in terms of solution finding for mental wellness and mental health conduciveness within the workplace as well, right? Integrate mental health into business strategy. So when you are, as an organization, are trying to see, this is how we're going to go, this is where we're going in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, that strategy needs to include how you're going to be looking after your people from a mental health perspective, and holistically so, right? Because we also need to understand that mental health is not only about one's emotions or one's mental health. It encompasses your physical health, your financial health, your physical well-being as well. So those things need to be included as well. So the one thing that we do, like I mentioned as well at Chiluba, is that we give 8 days of mental health a year. It's broken up into 2 days per quarter. All you have to do is say, hey, Andizi, I'm not coming today. I'll see you guys in a day or two. I'm taking this time up. And that's something that we've put into our business strategy to ensure that our people are taken care of as well, from a mental health and a holistic perspective as well, right? Because mental health at work is not only just about providing support, it's about how work itself is designed. And with that, I'm going to say thank you.
Kulani, thank you so much. I think, I don't know, it feels like these conversations should just go on forever, because when you spoke about culture reactive, for me, I felt like we have not even pushed it even a bit. Because when we speak about taking into consideration matters of mental health in the workplace, we are speaking really a one-sided way. We are not speaking in a holistic manner. And it would be really interested to see how do we get into that holistic manner. Because when I say I'm not well, I was making this and saying, I'm making this as women in the rural areas. And I hope by making this example, I don't sound very prejudiced or too much cultural, but we're talking about issues of gender-based violence. And saying that women had corners where they knew where to deal with certain issues. When you look at women in the rural areas, when they went to collect water, either they went to the river or they went to collect wood, that was their sacred space. They didn't want anyone, even when somebody says, I'm coming with you, they'll be like, I went, you can't. Because now it's no longer about collecting wood only, but it was about a safe space.
100%.
That can I get to a safe space in a traditional format, in a way that I'm finding that this is suitable for me. So I think let's pause for question and answer. Time is out of our side. I'm really interested to look at how do we reform the labor law around employee wellness. I'm really interested to look at what will be the advocacy looking like. What does it look like? Maybe it has moved.
It's there. It's there, Dr. Sia. So we recently, and if my memory serves me correctly, but I'm up there in the age, I think we had amendment to the Occupational and Health and Safety Act, which says that employers have to provide a reasonably safe space for employees in which to work. And in 2018, that amendment came in to include mental health in the workplace as well, because it was previously not there. So not only physical safety, but we're also required.
The legislator.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let me go into I'm going to skip many slides in my presentation, but I just want to go into my presentation. If you can please show my presentation, you can go to the next slide, I think. And I think on the next slide, I think we've already spoken about it. So this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the truth. I want to talk about the crisis. I want to talk about the system failures. I also want to talk about what's the opportunity that is currently there, and then we can conclude. So you can move to the next slide. You're going to see a lot of numbers in my slides today. I'm not doing traditionally as I do with the mentees, because I'm one of the mentors that I come here and provide support. But you'll see that today I'm not talking about mental health as in how do we deal and how do you cope. But today I want to talk about the bigger picture, so that we can be able to be better positioned to advocate for where the gaps are. And I think Khulane has already said this. It's 1 in 3 South Africans will experience a mental health in their life, illness in their lifetime. That's big. And you're looking at about 30% lifetime prevalence of mental disorders. Then you're also looking at depression and anxiety are the leading conditions nationally. And I really wish I could repeat that. It's depression and anxiety that are leading nationally. I've taken myself out of the space because I've been working in HIV and AIDS, but due to the issues that we're currently facing with Donald Trump, the global north and the global south are not so much friends anymore. So my work is becoming less and less limited as an epidemiologist and providing support to the South African National Strategic Plan around HIV and AIDS. So last year I had to find myself quickly moving back into mental health space. And the numbers are quite shocking. About 2 to 4 million people currently right now are living with depression in South Africa. We're sitting at how many people living in South Africa? 57 million. So 58 million to be quite precise. And we're talking at about 15.8 experience anxiety disorders. And I said this, that in the beginning, mental health was us and them before 2020. But after 2020, there was a wall that was removed from all of us, that it was no longer us and them. Now it's an issue of all of us. And then mental health is not marginal in South Africa. It's population level reality. So we're not just talking about a small proportion of South Africans. We are talking about a very huge number of South Africans that are going through just these 2 diseases. We call them depression and anxiety. Go to the next slide. It's still numbers, but I want us to focus on the first one. We are talking at about over 14,000 suicide deaths per year in South Africa. Actually, in 2022, we went as high as 28,000 deaths, people that committed suicide. I want to read these 2. There are 2 things that I want to read to you. I wrote them down when the other speakers were talking. During pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the testimonies around mental health said, I was locked down with my abuser. It was better than he did it. It was better before when he did it once a year because he lived in the mines and only comes home in December. But during lockdown, he did it every day. What are we dealing with here? We're not just dealing with mental health only. but we are also dealing with the roots of mental health that is left unattended. I want to read this one. These are two things that are happening. This one is COVID-19. This one was a note that I got during the floods, which is climate change. So we need to begin the language now to speak about climate change and mental health. We need to begin to talk about pandemic preparedness and mental health. Those are the languages we need to begin to speak about. During climate change, it was floods in KwaZulu-Natal, and we moved people and communities and families into community halls. Some are still there. The government has not done justice. They've not built houses for them till now. Some are still living in communal places. And one of the notes was read like this: I was raped at every night by the community leader. I wish the floods never came. So we're not dealing with mental health only here. We're dealing with mental health and the problems that the world is facing. So I'm talking about severity and the social impact of mental health. So I need us to really begin this conversation, not just talking about it from it's a mental health issue, but as the world is changing, let's talk about mental health and what does that look like in the 21st century. Let's move to the next slide. I just want to be done with the numbers so that we can get to question and answers. I put this slide purposely because I want us to look at, really, South Africa does not have a mental health problem. It has an access problem. We have a problem with access. And our problem with access is 92% treatment gap. So it means that fewer than 1 in 10 people get care in South Africa. I'm not talking about those who can afford to go and take themselves through their medical schemes that are funded. I'm talking about the general population. And you'll see the numbers are shocking among young people. The numbers are shocking between the ages of 15 and 29. And then only 27% of people with severe conditions, they receive treatment. In some contexts, like in KwaZulu-Natal, we are sitting at over 80% unmet needs of treatment, of mental health. These people need this, but they can't access it. Then we're talking about less than 25% of people living in mental health access core overall. So we have a problem here. Let's move to the next slide. The health system gap, really, please let's look at the first line. And I think maybe you can tell where the problem is. Only 5% of the health budget goes to mental health. It's only 5%. Don't know if we are speaking about this even with around the issues of national health insurance, but I'm sitting in the conversations of national health insurance, and I can tell you now, that has not moved a bit. Even by saying we are taking health into universal health coverage, as South Africa speaks, that has not moved. And we have a severe shortage of professionals, such as psychiatrists and public sector. If you understand South African public health systems, we've got what you have, your clinic, your local clinic in your community. That's what you call your primary health care. It's your PHC. It is led by a nurse, a professional nurse. A doctor, if you're lucky, comes in once a week, if you're lucky, and they're only not going to touch, and that's a general practitioner, and they're not going to touch any community person. They are only there to renew scripts of those who are in chronic illness. Your likes of HIV and AIDS, they're not even going to touch the clients. They are there to only sign files. They sit with stack of files. Trust me, I'm a public health expert. I work in that every day. No health professional that is designated and assigned in the primary healthcare level to mental health. That should say something. Even if you move above to CHC, which is your community health centers, you find that you have one clinical psychologist, if you're lucky, or a registered counselor. No psychiatry, nothing. And then if you move to a tertiary or maybe district hospital, then you begin. But the route and how you get there, it's such a very red tape, because you must move from a PHC level to a CHC level. From a CHC level, you move into a district where you're finally going to see a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. So we do have a poor integration into primary healthcare in South Africa, and the services are usually only urban-centered, hospital-based, not community-based. Let's move to the next slide. So here's a big problem that we have in South Africa. Inequality and vulnerable groups. We are sitting with a high burden of mental health issues around women. And we are looking at higher psychological distress on women, women in perimenopause stage, premenopausal, women in menopause who are going through changes in their body. It's their right to go and sit and talk to somebody. But if you are unemployed, that's something that is still inequality in South Africa. And then we are talking about youth and students in South Africa. Universities have something which I call it tick the box. They do have student counseling services. I'm working with universities right now and TVET colleges across South Africa. I'll show you at the end how much we've improved access. Then we're also talking about Black South Africans linked to socioeconomical factors, and then we're talking about low-income communities as well as urban poor. But mental health is in South Africa is deeply tied to inequality, poverty, as well as structural violence. As I've already mentioned, the issues of gender-based violence, the issues of rape, sexual violence, the issues of domestic violence, GBV. South Africa is ranked number 4 in the world with gender-based violence. And if you dig deeper within the violence that is taking place and the femicide, you begin to see that it's mental health issues. Let's go to the next slide, because I want to offer a solution. We can skip that slide. Maybe let me read the last line out of that one. It's just World Health Organization insight into this work that I'm doing, that mental health conditions are treatable. This is what the World Health Organization is saying. They're saying mental health conditions are treatable at relatively low cost, but systems fail to scale. So we're talking about scaling up services. That is an issue, even in South Africa. I sit at National Platform, and I am an advisor to the National Department of Health through SANEC. They hear us and then they don't hear us, and then it's a policy issue, then it's a legal issue, and then it's advocacy issue. Then we get movements that are lobbying on the side, and then it comes back sometimes as if we are just making noise around the issues of mental health. You can go to the next slide. So as I said, as from December, I'm now acquainted to something called cloud therapist. I don't know, I just want to rest, because we're speaking about 21st century and the world is moving. And why I want to rest, because as a psychologist myself, I've never thought, because I'm a research psychologist and I've been in research for so many years, and I'm a public health expert, and I've always asked myself, what does the world look like in the future? We have a younger generation that don't want human interaction. And I hope you can underline what I'm saying, because it's found on research. Young people don't want human interaction. They've told us in our public health settings that if I'm coming for my medication, I will prefer to collect it at Clicks, at Discam, or we now have something called the Pele boxes, where you get sent an SMS once a month, and it tells you that your medication has arrived in your nearest shopping mall or center, where the Pele boxes are. They look like post boxes. They are all over everywhere in South Africa. We've installed them everywhere. And young people are utilizing the Pele boxes because they just want to go and click and get their medication. They don't want to talk to the nurse because of the, the quality of life survey showed us that there's not much stigma anymore that exists in our healthcare facilities. It ranked it at 28%. So that's subject for argument. But then we saw that there was a high stigma in the community that what are you going to the local facility for? So the stigma associated with the person walking, going to the clinic. So young people are utilizing digital platforms. And ever since I joined Cloud Therapist, this is a digital online platform providing therapy and mental health support via the cloud. It connects users with licensed therapists through virtual channels. And guess what? Good news for you. The first session is for free. Let's move to the next slide. So I'm going to be browsing through this one because I'm trying to provide a solution. Our core services at Cloud Therapist, we've got an online counseling. It's a video, audio, or chats. It's either you want to look at me as you're looking at me, or you don't want to look at me. You want an audio where we chat, or sometimes we can chat. But we are not that advanced yet. You're not chatting to AI. SAPRA, which is the South African Health Regulatory Authority, has just approved the first artificial intelligence mental health tool that can now be used, but there's still a lot of issues around how do we go about using AI and how do you feed this AI to be able to respond. On cloud therapy, you're talking to a real person, it's just that you can't see them. So we do a mental health assessment, which is for free, where you get to click. University students have shown between the ages of 15 and 29, as we are doing it in universities, we've shown that young people are suffering from PSTD, from post-traumatic stress disorder. Young people are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. 79% of our clients that have touched base with our, last week we're doing Elangeni TVET College, and we had 600 young people in the hall, and we screen all of them. 79% of young people said, I'm still traumatized from what happened to me in my childhood. Imagine that person goes into a workplace, they go into university. You can imagine. Let's move to the next slide. So here we have an individual seeking accessible mental health support. It's youth and students that we are targeting, professionals needing flexible therapy options, organizations offering employee wellness programs. We also want to offer this to them, but they are actually already part of the users. Go to the next slide. So one of the key benefits is that you can access this from anywhere. Privacy and confidentiality, flexible scheduling. We're reducing stigma compared to in-person visits. Next slide. So there are technology features that are currently there: secured cloud-based system, data encryption and confidentiality, mobile and desktop access, integration with digital health tools. And for the first time, we invited last month by the Minister of Health to come and talk about cloud therapy and how can that make a conversation part of the national health insurance. So we are making moves, we are shifting things because we are saying, hey, it's still part of a conversation that needs to happen at policy level. And also when guidelines are developed for national health insurance, we should be speaking at all tools need to be in there. Next slide. I've already spoken into this, so we want to expand this, support underserved communities. We want to use it in crisis pandemic solutions, enable data-driven interventions, and it's a comprehensive mental health solution for everybody that needs it. Cloud Therapist offers a specialized mental health service tailored to different sectors and needs. I'm almost done. There are limitations. There are limitations. We can move to the next slide. Internet access, of course, digital literacy, regulatory ethical concerns. We have to answer to the ethics very often about it. I think already we're sitting at double interventions where I sat on the first ethical review and there were another ethics review again this year on ethical considerations around this. The next slide. There are future opportunities that I want to talk about, which is going to be AI-assisted therapy tool, integration with primary healthcare systems. We're also going to be scaling in low resource setting, and we're going to be looking at personalized mental health intervention. Next slide. This is what our website looks like. If you want to access your free session, you can even book a coaching session there. I'm there, so you'll find me there. But you can also book any other therapist. We got so many therapists. I think there's currently they are sitting at over 60 therapists and registered counselors, as well as professional that are sitting there who are willing to help. They are open between Monday to Friday, and you can book online at any given time. If I need to share, maybe I'll share with Jabu. There's a voucher that I'll share, which will actually access you the first free session. What is important with the first free session, I want to say this, is your assessment. Do an assessment so that you can get a report back to you that's going to tell you what is wrong. And I want to urge everybody that is in this webinar. People go to see mental health professionals because they want to know what is wrong with them. And I want to tell you that's a wrong approach. There's nothing wrong with you. Go in and see somebody who's going to tell you what's good about you. There's something called positive psychology, and the mentees know me. And I always speak about positive psychology. It's not about puffing people up and saying that you're great. Because every time you want to see somebody or you suggest that I think we need to see a therapist, you're suggesting that there's something wrong. Sometimes we need to go see people like us to tell you what's good about you so that you can be propelled and built to move on in the right direction. It's not always about there's something wrong with me. And I want to close with this. Understand that there's two things here when we're talking about mental health. It's either we're talking about the psychosis. Is it something that needs diagnosis that we need to really treat and get you on treatment? Or is it neurology? Is it really just neurotics? Is it just the way you think and it's behavior change? In behavior, we can change how you think. We can first understand that there's neurons in your brain. They're sending messages every day. They're communicating, and how to silence the wrong thoughts in your brain. How to treat your brain as the first class tool that you have for your body to function. I always say this, and I'm going to repeat it. Mental health is important as brushing our teeth every day. Take care of your thoughts. Let's talk. Let's talk about your thinking. Let's talk about why you're crashing. Because there's nothing wrong with you if you understand how your brain functions. And you can communicate to your brain and like, not now. And I want to warn everybody. It's not about 21st century and putting everybody on ashwagandha. No. We are raising a nonchalant generation where everybody thinks that we need to treat ourselves, or everyone is just prescribing themselves over the till, over the counter. Oh, I'll just go get this stuff, bruh. It's excellent. People who on retail come for such a long time. It's dangerous. Don't teach your neurons something that is not natural. There are hormones in your brain that are damaged by you by being nonchalant. We need you to be chalant about things. We need you to pay attention about things, but we need you to know how to put them and cluster them properly so that you are fully functional. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I'll end there for now. Let's go to the question and answer. Go to my last slide. I'm sorry to mess you up. The last slide. Was this the last one? Okay, I thought I put it in there, but I didn't. It's fine. I think I've spoken to it. Guys, make use of that care at Cloud Therapy. I have a free session for everybody. I don't care, old, young, whoever you are, come through. We have a free session for you. Let me go to question and answer. Are there any questions that are seated on, because I see time, we've already just went a little bit past time. So just please pardon us. Type your questions in the chat. There's nothing at the moment. Let me look at hands. It's also nice to talk to people. Any hands?
Hey,
Okay.
yes, this is Andre James. I just want to say thank you, Anastasia, for this platform. Anastasia is our legal executive and also our board advisor at Nuance Technology. And we're also in the running for Entrepreneur Impact. We have our hub registered in South Africa. I'm based in the US. I have a background in healthcare technology, 10 years in healthcare technology. So the big hospitals here in America, I have designed their systems, their implementations, and taught their doctors on the technology. And I'm using all of my experience to build agriculture technology for Africa. I do suffer from anxiety, especially as a, someone with working in tech. So when he said that, students prefer to not go inside a doctor's office, that is true. We prefer to click a few buttons. But another thing that is really helpful for anyone who is suffering from any mental health issue is food. Food is medicine. Just access to clean water, access to nutritious food daily helps the body. And that's what we are doing with Nuance Technology, with access to food for medicine, because food is a big factor in why many people are facing also these medical conditions, because the food is not nutritious enough to support the body and what it needs, on top of the therapy and so on. So I think we need to all start with the basics, but I did drop a couple links to our profile and also for the Entrepreneur of Impact that we are currently up for 2026. Today is the last day to vote, and we are number 3 nationally. And I'd like to thank Anastasia for being here with me for the last 2 years. She's amazing. We also do have the VP of Google and the creator of Google Developer X is our first investor and is pushing for us across Africa and the global South. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And also thanks to Anastasia for such a beautiful connection. I want to echo what you've just said. We got 2 brains in our body. We got this brain and the other one is is the stomach. And normally when people say I have a gut feeling, which is our gut, your gut will not have the intuition it's supposed to have if you're not putting the right food in there. So we have to learn to eat the right food so that our brains can also function better. Nutrition is very important. Thank you so much for that contribution. I'd love to link up with you and look at what health systems technology you're currently installing in America and what would that look like for us in South Africa.
I have so many ideas for you. So many ideas. Please, let's
Perfect.
connect.
Okay, let's connect. Any other hand?
Sorry, Dr. Sia, can I just request that Andre shares his link and request for everybody to please kindly vote for him. As he
Okay,
mentioned,
please do.
today's the last day to vote. I think if I got it right, Andre.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, sir. Can you share your link, please?
Yes, it is shared in the question and answers, our LinkedIn, and also the link to vote. You could share with your contacts. It is free to vote. And it's global. You just need a Facebook to just verify your account, and that's it.
Okay.
And this is for Entrepreneur Magazine.
Perfect. I'm looking for more hands.
While we're still waiting on hands, Dr. Sia, we do have Shiona in the comments who says, how do you manage boundaries if you are an emotional person?
Okay. Any of my colleagues want to take it? Actually, I'm looking at
I
you.
will.
Okay. Okay, go for it, Kulani.
I will say this from personal experience, and this is somebody who's an empath. And I think this is something that I learned from a very unlikely source. I learned it from Trevor Noah. He was talking about it because he was diagnosed with ADHD. So the way I manage my boundaries is to say no first before I say yes. Because as a Black woman, I've been socialized to always take care of other people before I take care of myself. And the one practice I've put in my own personal life, and this is both professionally and socially in my personal life as well, and especially when I'm feeling, work has been a lot and there's a lot going on, is to say no before I say yes, because my inclination is to always want to help the next person before I help myself, right? So I would say the best way to do that, and especially as an emotional and empath, is to want to look after you and say no first, and then you can, when you've had time to reconsider, you can then, come back with a yes. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. I think you've answered that beautifully. Moving on to the next question, we have Anastasia, who says, workplace bullying is on the increase. Do you think that there is a correlation between the increase in lack of mental health? And how do you help young people be assertive in workplaces? What advices can you give, if anyone is willing to take it?
Okay. Again, something I unfortunately have to deal with a lot in the workplace. There is a correlation between workplace bullying and people and mental health issues in the workplace, of course, because if somebody is being bullied in the workplace, they are going to come under severe pressure, and we see them, dealing with a lot of, or developing a lot of mental health issues as well. So, um, my advice is twofold. My advice will always be first to organizations, and this is something that I mentioned in my presentation, is that we need to be very cognizant of the kind of people that we are putting in charge of other people, right? Being in charge of a department is not only the work that that department produces, but also the people within that particular department. So if organizations and workplaces could be a little more stringent and careful, we would avoid issues around workplace bullying as well, because the leadership will then, determine the culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then to individuals is to realize that the workplace and work is a relationship. It's a two-way street, and it's okay and very necessary to stand up for yourself as an individual. What we tend to do, what we see, is that people would rather leave than to address issues of workplace bullying because they're afraid, of pushback, etc., etc. But the more that we highlight these issues, the more that we talk about them, it becomes an easier conversation to have, and it creates awareness, because what tends to happen is that situations like this are swept under the carpet. So I would definitely, say to people, speak out, but also in doing so, ensure that you're taking care of yourself, right? You also don't want to further compromise yourself and your well-being by being a martyr for everybody else.
Yeah, I also want to add on that one of what you're saying, that statistically, we've learned that people who have stayed longer in institutions, they're most likely become not so easily adjusting to change. And when new ones come in during the onboarding process, if we're not going to get the onboarding process properly in the workplace, then it opens up for bullying later. And those who've been in organizations longer, they tend to bully those who have just arrived, and they use the line, I've been here longer, I know the boss longer, I know how the systems work. But actually, they are the ones who are fearful of change. And if we can actually have a proper conversation with them, we'll realize that they actually scared of change. People are scared of introduction of new tools in the workplace, but those who are new, they adapt quickly because it's all that they've been introduced into. So I think integration and employee wellness programs must really be in place to look at such. How do we close the gap to ensure that we don't get bullying? And I love what my sister said. It goes back to self-awareness. So we might need to push back to who you are, you know why I'm here, why you were employed here, and learning to speak your voice and make sure that your voice is not being shut down within that space. Thank you so much. I don't know if we still have any other question.
Yes, we do. We have one from Naledi. Her question is, how does
Is it only one so that we take all of them?
only one more left?
Okay,
Yeah.
go for it.
Her question is, what does assisted AI look like, and what does it entail?
With regards to mental health, right?
Yes, sir.
So I think because we are still sitting at early stages of AI assisted mental health platforms, and many of them are still taking place in clinical trial setting and in study settings. They have not just been put out there because there's been ethical considerations. But in terms of the cloud assisted, it's really still a human driven. It's just that you're not making an actual warm body conversation with somebody out there. So I can only answer as far as the cloud is concerned, the cloud therapy is concerned, that there's still a human being that is on the other side. And you book your appointment. First, there's a screening that you do, and then you get sent a report. That report becomes the first question of conversation when we actually sit and have the conversation. I've had a number of conversations of those who have booked online. I find that people are most likely to come back for their next scheduled appointment if it's online, rather than people. I've run a practice for almost 4 years, and I suffered because people are not coming back for their follow-ups. It's like people feel like a psychologist is just a tick box. I went and I saw somebody, but they never really went back. I think when I was with Lifeline Durban, because I was working with programs where it was telephonic conversations at ongoing, so we're dealing with a large population of people, but I wouldn't really classify that as an AI. I think mostly in our cloud sessions, but with actual AI, we're still sitting with some ethical limitations, but it's been passed. But there's still a lot of conversations that are back and forth in terms of data efficacy, and so on and so forth.
Thank
Any
you,
other?
Dr. Sia. I think we have just one more. If we can just focus on it. I think maybe it wasn't dealt with by Kulani in extent. The anesthetic just gave me a heads up. If we can answer the one that says, how can young people be more assertive in workplaces, and what advice can you give to young people starting off in their careers?
Professor, do you want to take it further as well?
Okay, thank you. I just want to maybe just go back a step for just the bullying as well. I think bullying is also such a nuanced concept. Firstly, it doesn't just start in the workplace. It definitely follows through from earlier on, and there's definitely things that happen in the bully's life that make them become bullies, and there's a whole psychology behind it, and I'm not an expert on that. So I think if there were better tools for people to be able to deal with certain issues in their lives and trauma in their lives. You know, you could circumvent some of the impact or bullying impact that happens in day-to-day lives. And I think then going on to being assertive, I think because like I said, bullying is such a nuanced concept. And in this age where there's different generations that are working in the same organization, there's older generations, the boomers, and then we have the Gen Zs. It's a mixing or a melting pot of personalities. It's a melting pot of different generational work ethics, and that can be also quite difficult to navigate. So I think an assertiveness in the workplace is also quite difficult to just say that this is the answer and it's going to work for everyone. But I think confidence building is what is more appropriate for me. If I would be the one to say or give guidance on that, I think there's a confidence building. It's a competency element that builds that confidence. And once you have that as part of your what you put forward into the workplace, then the assertiveness almost comes naturally, because assertiveness can also be misplaced and come across as aggressiveness, and
Definitely.
and it's it's a very difficult subject to put into just put into a box. So there's a lot of different elements, but I would say as a very foundation, I think confidence building and competency building would lead to assertiveness.
What I will say is young people must learn few anchors. You must learn what is it that anchors me in my profession and stick to what anchors you. When you are being bullied in the workplace, they're testing your anchor. Do you really know what you're saying? They're testing your knowledge, they're testing your confidence, they're testing your personality. A lot is at play. One of my young people that I mentor, one of my mentees, came home last week and said that he sits at the head office and in the field are data quality mentors that work in the Department of Health. And he sends this guys like, I really need this report urgently because it's needed for me to submit elsewhere. And this guy responds, who's in the field, who's older in the company and also very matured, very traditional in KwaZulu-Natal. And this guy responds and says, hey, Wemfowethu, meaning, hey, little boy, can you please ask me everything that you need to ask me now? Because I'm in a meeting, I cannot be in and out of this meeting. So he comes home, he's really pushed that he did respond to this guy, but he felt intimidated. He really needed the data. People have a tendency of saying this. People have a tendency of saying, I'm gonna get this document to you now. But when they actually say that, they don't understand that it's urgent and it's important. I don't want you to get it now to me. I need it in the neck. Give me specifications. I need that document back in 10 minutes. I don't care if you need to get out of the meeting in and out. You're not saying that out loud. But now here's your anchor. I really think that the meeting that you are in is important. And I'm sorry that it looks like I'm getting you out of the meeting now and again, but this information is urgently needed. I will appreciate your priority on this matter. So your anchor is your professional tone in this regard. I was able to reply to someone very much fully anchored, acknowledging that I'm really sorry that you feel like I'm taking you in and out of meeting to reply to me, but this is really important. Can I get it in the next 5 minutes? Can I get it in the next 10 minutes? And I don't know. I don't want to sound racial because I was going to take it further and say, especially us, people, we work with people and you're like, there's a mother, like Anastasia now, she's 50 and she's got an intern who's 20. She's going to want to be called Mom Anastasia at work. There's no mother at work. There must be a tone at work that is set. For mental health to exist, there has to be a tone. There's no mommy at work. I don't care if that's what you call a culture. I don't care if that's a tradition. But at work, there's the CEO, there's the senior, and all of that. So our anchors are important. Let me close it right there before I start another session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sia.
Okay.
I'd like to extend a thank you to all of you for joining us. Dr. Sia, Kulani, Pravashni, thank you for sharing your experiences and your expertise on mental health. I think it's a topic that we can talk about the whole night. So thank you also to our guests for staying this long. Even after time, we are so appreciative of everyone engaging. And I think it's a topic that we can honestly look at yet again throughout the year. And I would also like to invite everyone to just be on the lookout for our next webinars. Our next one will be at the end of May. So please do look out for that on our social media pages. But overall, thank you for engaging with us in this very important topic. We appreciate it, and I hope that everyone will also make use of the offer that Dr. Sia has generously given us. So everyone, thank you for tonight, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody, and good night.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.